as a child, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And when I got older, I realized that if I were a veterinarian, I would see abused animals. And one thing I can't handle is seeing abused animals or abused children. And I knew I just couldn't deal with that. So I thought, okay, plants don't really scream. And you don't get quite as attached to plants as you do to animals or children. So I started out as a microbiologist. My training is in microbiology, both my bachelor's and my master's. And in the summertime, I worked in a plant pathology lab. I worked with Ann Vitiver and Jim Stedman at University of Nebraska. And that got me interested in how I could use my microbiology in order to do something useful. So after I finished my master's, I then went to Wisconsin to work with Luis Sequeira. And there I wanted to learn the plant side of things. So I had pretty strong training in microbiology and in bacterial pathogens. But I wanted to understand how the plant responded to those pathogens. And that started me down the path of first physiology and then genomics. So my group studies how bacterial pathogens control plant biology. And so specifically, I work with a bacterial pathogen of rice, which is called Xanthomonas oryzae, Pathovar oryzae. It causes a devastating disease called bacterial blight of rice. And the pathogen causes that disease by introducing virulence effectors or proteins into the plant cell. So it literally introduces them into the plant cell. Once those proteins are in the plant cell, in this particular case, many of them actually act as transcriptional activators. So that's how they influence the plant. So they get into the nucleus of the plant, they bind to the promoters, and they activate genes. In other cases, a very interesting thing about these pathogens is that the plant can also be resistant to the pathogen through lack of susceptibility. I'm curious about what they're doing. Are they all turning on susceptibility genes, and are some of them more important than others in terms of determining susceptibility and also in terms of determining resistance? And then understanding the genomes through the evolution, the coevolution of the pathogen and the plant, we can actually even predict, we hope in advance, whether the plant will be susceptible to the pathogen and how quickly that resistance will break down in the field, because we can see what genes the pathogen has, what effector genes, and we can see what resistance genes or susceptibility genes the plant has, and kind of predict the durability of that resistance. So another aspect of my research is trying to understand what makes resistance durable or not durable. One of the biggest frustrations that I experienced and still experience to a certain extent is being ignored. I mean, how many times have you said something in a meeting and then 20 minutes later somebody else says it, usually a male, and then then you're thinking, well, I said that 20 minutes ago. Why are we just getting around to it? I was lucky because in my experience throughout my career, while that is a frustrating experience, I also had a lot of male mentors or males in those meetings who would say, well, didn't Jan just say that 20 minutes ago? So it's still frustrating, and it's still, every time it happens, I've learned to just sort of sit back and think, okay, they'll get around to that idea in a few minutes when somebody else suggests it. And then just let it go. But it's something that I think is annoying. I think probably the most gracious way to get around it is if I don't hear somebody else within a few minutes coming up with that idea, and I think it's a good idea, I'll re-inject it, and maybe with a louder voice.
Yeah.
So, and I think, I think it's kind of building self-confidence, which I was raised in an environment where you don't argue with authority. And that has always been hard for me, to stand up to authority and say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't the best way to approach this or whatever. And that it comes from my upbringing, but I think it's something that we as women experience a little bit more because we're trained to be a little bit more subdued or a little less outspoken. I still remember being told once, women can be assertive, but they can't be aggressive. It's not a bad piece of advice, but it's telling. It says something about where we are, what we have. So, but it's a difficult thing to navigate. But in the end, I have the I have the understanding that if my idea was the right idea and a good idea, at least I knew it was my idea, even if nobody else did. Yes, I had some wonderful mentors. One of One who was particularly impactful was Ann Vitiver from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I worked for her as an undergraduate along with Jim Stedman. But Ann has she's still kind of a mentor. She's long retired now, but I still, every great once in a while, I will require her opinion on things, or I'll ask her for help or guidance on things. She was very insightful and very helpful. But I've also had wonderful male mentors. Luis Sequeira was an amazing advisor, and in his own quiet way, sort of pushed me out. I still remember an example many years ago when I was on the faculty at Kansas State, and I went to the president with the president of the university with a with some. I was the leader of a group of people there, the university distinguished professors, and we went with an option for the president to consider. And he wouldn't look at me. He kept looking at the man who was with me. And he, as I was trying to describe this idea, and he would respond to the man. And so finally, the man grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me in front of him and said, "She's the president. You should be listening to her, not to me." So, these were the kind of people that kind of helped me gain the confidence and helped me realize that, I needed to speak out to be heard and I needed to stand my ground. But they were important people in getting me to that transition. And then to the question of, have I mentored graduate students? Yes, I do. And I will say, interestingly, I realized this a number of years ago that I didn't understand the importance of young faculty having mentors in university situations because I was relatively independent, and I thought I didn't need that. But and I learned a lot of things the hard way because back then they didn't assign mentors. That was not something that was done. But I realized that I would go to the appropriate people to ask, how do I navigate this problem, or how do I navigate this system within the university? And I came to the realization a few years ago, or many years ago actually, that it is important for me to mentor and to help people navigate the steps through tenure and promotion, and to help my graduate students navigate how do you. It never occurred to me that they need to be told how to register for classes or how to do this, that, or the other thing, because I just assumed that, now I just assume they know it, but they don't. They need to have this mentorship and this guidance. And they also need to see how colleagues interact. But that's why, like, going to the APS meetings or the plant and animal genome meetings is important, because our students and our postdocs watch how we interact with our colleagues and they learn from that. And that's something I don't think we innately realize how important it is. One of the most fascinating things that I probably have learned from the network is um, I had no idea how many women were out there doing high-level genomics, exciting research. And, you know, I would never have met or talked to a chicken genomics person had I not been sitting next to them at the WIC dinner and learning some of the experiences and some of the tools of the trade that they had to learn. I mean, it has given me new connections that, you know, when we stick within our own fields, like plant pathology, I wouldn't have talked to a beef genomics person. And now, you know, through the WIG experience, I've had that opportunity to meet them. And you know, these people are extremely approachable. They're wonderful people. And that helps a lot as well, because maybe because we're women and we're in a comfortable environment, I don't know, but they're just so approachable. You feel like you can ask anything and they'll give you an answer. So I know we try to engage, and they do come, the postdocs and graduate students. I think if we need to reach deeper into our community and help and bring these people together with us again, so they can watch colleagues interact and they can see, you know, how does a plant person talk to an animal person, and and what are the common threads? I mean, genomes are genomes are genomes, but what are some of the common threads and what are some of the differences and things that we have to deal with, not only in our science, but in our personal careers. I think we need our young scientists or early career scientists to be persistent. You can't give up. I mean, that's science in and of itself, but even in the personal aspects of science, we have to be persistent. Like I was saying, you have to, if you have a good idea, you need to make sure it's heard. Choose your battles. Don't waste your energy on things that are not that important. Step back and evaluate whether taking up this fight or this battle is really worth the energy or the effort, because you have limited amounts of energy and limited amounts of time. So put it towards the important things. Don't take up a battle that is not worth fighting in the end.